The lobby of the hospital hummed with the quiet shuffle of feet and the occasional distant beep of machines. At the center of it all strode a woman who seemed out of place in this world of fragility and waiting. Her tailored suit was sharp, her heels clicked with precision, and her phone never left her hand. She was a CEO, used to commanding boardrooms and orchestrating deals worth millions, but in this sterile hallway she looked like someone rushing to escape. Her eyes flicked over unread emails, her mind already planning the next meeting, the next crisis, the next win. She did not notice the soft, curious gaze that had been following her. A tiny hand, no bigger than a bird's wing, reached out and wrapped around her fingers. She stopped mid-step, startled. Looking down, she found a little girl no older than 6, her hair slightly messy, her shoes scuffed but her eyes impossibly bright. The girl didn't say hello, didn't ask who she was. Instead, she looked up with the sort of pure sincerity that only children possess and whispered, "Mommy needs a smile." For the first time in years, the CEO's phone slipped from her grip. She blinked, caught off guard, her carefully constructed world cracking at the edges. That one sentence, that small, unexpected touch, landed heavier than any corporate decision she had ever made. The girl's hand was warm, steady, and it held her there, forcing her to pause, to see, to feel. The woman froze, her entire body caught between disbelief and an emotion she couldn't quite name. She had stood face to face with investors who tried to break her, with rivals who wanted to see her fail, yet never had she felt so disarmed as she did by the soft weight of that little hand. Slowly, almost awkwardly, she bent down so her eyes met the girl's. "Who's Mommy?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended, almost unsure of itself. The girl's lips curved into a gentle, unshaken smile, as if she had known all along the question would come. She turned and pointed toward a corner of the waiting room. There, hunched in a chair, sat a woman who looked like she had been carrying the world on her shoulders for far too long. Papers rested loosely in her lap, her fingers clutching them as though they were her last anchor. Her clothes were worn, her posture weary, and yet she tried, futilely, to muster some semblance of strength for her daughter's sake. The CEO's gaze lingered on her. She noticed the faint trembling in the woman's hands, the pale exhaustion etched into her face. The air seemed to thicken around her as an unfamiliar ache pressed into her chest. The girl's words, "Mommy needs a smile," echoed louder now, wrapping themselves around her heart. For the first time in years, she wasn't calculating her next move. She was simply standing still, watching a stranger struggle, and realizing she could not walk away. The CEO took a tentative step toward the woman, her heels clicking softer now, almost hesitant. As she drew closer, the picture became painfully clear. This wasn't just fatigue from a long day, it was the weight of nights without sleep, of endless worry that hollowed out the spirit. The woman lifted her eyes briefly, and in them the CEO saw something she had not seen in a long time, quiet desperation wrapped in love. The mother attempted a smile when she noticed her daughter leading this stranger forward. It flickered on her lips, fragile and fleeting, but it couldn't hold. Her face crumpled under the pressure of keeping everything together. She quickly looked down, embarrassed, as though revealing weakness was something shameful. And in that fragile moment, something shifted in the CEO. She had spent years perfecting the art of appearing unbreakable, wearing her own kind of mask in every boardroom, every interview, every negotiation. But watching this woman try, and fail, to pretend for her daughter's sake struck her deeper than any corporate failure ever could. She realized with a sudden, piercing clarity that she wasn't so different. She, too, had been hiding behind strength, burying her exhaustion, pushing through loneliness. But unlike this woman, she had the luxury of power and resources. The CEO's throat tightened, her usual words of command replaced by a silence heavy with recognition. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt the sting of tears threatening to rise. Almost without thinking, the CEO lowered herself into the chair beside the weary mother. It was an unfamiliar gesture for someone who was used to towering above others, but in that moment height, power, and titles meant nothing. She didn't introduce herself as anyone important, she simply asked, softly, "Are you okay?" The woman blinked, startled. For a second she looked as though she might brush the question aside, offering the polite, automatic, "I'm fine." But the CEO didn't look away, didn't check her phone, didn't rush. She stayed present, her attention steady in a way the mother hadn't felt from anyone in weeks. Something inside the woman cracked, and the tears came, quiet at first, then spilling freely, a flood she could no longer hold back. The little girl climbed into her mother's lap, wrapping her arms tightly around her neck. "See, Mommy. You can smile now," she whispered with the conviction of a child who believes in miracles. And slowly, through her tears, the woman did smile, not the forced, brittle curve of lips she had tried before, but a genuine, trembling smile born of release and relief. The CEO felt her own chest loosen, as if some invisible armor she had carried for years was beginning to fall away. She didn't offer money or solutions, she offered something rarer in her world: time, presence, and compassion. And in that waiting room, surrounded by sterile walls and fluorescent lights, a kind of quiet transformation began to take root in them all. When the CEO finally rose to leave, the little girl gave her one last squeeze of the hand, as if sealing a promise. The mother's smile lingered, fragile yet radiant, glowing with a warmth that seemed to push back the heaviness in the room. For the CEO, it wasn't just a smile she had helped create, it was a reminder of what truly mattered, a truth she had long forgotten in the noise of her career. Walking through the hospital doors, the cool air hit her face, but it was different this time. The rush to answer emails, the constant pull of deadlines, the obsession with winning, it all felt strangely small. In its place was the echo of a child's voice, gentle and insistent: "Mommy needs a smile." Those 4 words had done what years of success and wealth could not, they had pierced her guarded heart and reminded her of her own humanity. From that day forward, her leadership changed. Meetings began with listening rather than commanding. Her decisions considered people before profit. She made time to notice the invisible struggles behind the polished faces around her. And in doing so, she discovered that true power wasn't about control or prestige, it was about connection, about lifting others when they had no strength left to stand. The story of that little girl remained with her, a quiet compass guiding her steps. Because sometimes the greatest change in a life doesn't come from fortune or fame, but from a child's touch and a reminder that the world always needs more smiles.